Hey guys, and welcome back to Studying for State Board. We're going to start with Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is on the job. It piggybacks off the previous video, which was the beauty business in itself. That one pretty much talked a lot about owning your own business. This one piggybacks off that when it talks about booth rental. So it does kind of give you a hook of that previous chapter. But in this particular chapter, there's some objectives that you should have a knowledge of at this point. So being able to explain what is it like to be on the job? What is your training like? Because training as an esthetician is not like training at a desk job or at a warehouse or working in fast food or even retail. It is just completely different. Discuss the expectations of moving from school to work. What is it like to transition? Because that transition, again, is different. What does that look like? What do you need to do in order for you to go from being a student esthetician to actually being a licensed esthetician active in the beauty industry? Summarizing employment options in the real world. What employment options do you have as an esthetician to you? What things do you now have access to that you didn't have access to as a student esthetician? Where do you see yourself? Because now that you're finished school, you may not want to do facials. You may only want to do waxing. You may not actually want to do hands-on. You may just want to do the managerial piece of it. So you got to figure out, what employment options do you have now you're actually in the real world. Practice good money management. You want to practice good money management because you will be surprised how quickly you can spend your money. Because there is good money to be made in this industry. So you get fast money if you get cash tips. And you get cash tips. So if you have tips on a really good day, let's just say you have $100 in tips. You're thinking, oh, it's $100. Not really thinking of it. But your tips add up. So at the end of the month, let's just say you had maybe... I'm just going to throw a number out there hypothetically. If you had just added up in tips, maybe let's say $2,300 in tips, that's in tips that you didn't even account for because you just was blowing it. So you want to have practice good money management. Demonstrate selling in the salon, your spa, or your barber shop. Can you sell? Do you know how to sell? Do you know what it takes to sell? If that's not a good, strong area for you, maybe that's something that you want to invest in yourself in some type of business course or look up some YouTube videos of some sort. Using your marketing to expand your client base. Do you know how to leverage your clients leverage your social media to increase your client base, and not only increase your client base, retain them as well. Because I feel like we don't understand. We're in a space where the energy is moving so much faster. There's so many people that's not necessarily doing the same thing because you can easily stay in your own lane. But if there's something that you don't emphasize, maybe people don't see the cleanliness of your particular space, and you just start advertising you cleaning your space on social media, or you do a little clip of the wipe down during COVID, and that just increases the awareness for a client that you already have, and that just makes them want to stay that much more. Hopefully that makes some sense. So those are some objectives that you should have covered in your skincare class. If you did not thoroughly understand those points that were made during that particular chapter, I advise you to go back and look back over your notes or go back over the chapter. So these particular points or particular definitions for this particular chapter were not really long at all. There's only so many of them because, as I explained in the previous video for chapter 10, these these particular chapters are pretty much self-explanatory. That's why I wanted to start here opposed to starting with videos with the science of it, because I feel like it gives the study a good build up. Because when you're looking up something, you want to know, okay, well, what is it? What is this that I'm getting myself into? You don't necessarily get something and dive right into the science of something. And being an educator with the curriculums of the schools, I understand that that's pretty much the layout of most of the schools. You start pretty much into the science of it, or kind of like some of the mediocre content that you don't necessarily need. But I think if you go into it with the mindset of, okay, well, what is it? What am I going to do? Like, how do you even train? How do you get paid? What are my coworkers going to be like? How do I even market for this? And the reason that my thought process was to start this way is when I enter into real estate, my perception of what I thought it was versus what it really was totally different. I came in it looking at it from the perspective of, and this is when I was going to get my license, I came in it with the perspective of a real estate investor because I had invested previously. And when I went into it as an agent, I didn't realize how much capital you had to put up, which is not a lot, but I just didn't know that, just due to my ignorance, I didn't know that there was that capital even existed. So you may not know that you might have to market a certain way, that you might have to, it's a process to this industry, to every industry. So you may not know, yeah, I want the benefits of this particular industry, but do I want the process of this particular industry? So that's why I wanted to start here, because science, everybody can relate to science on some level. It's some degree of science you may want to go into. You go into facials, you're going to have to know a little bit more science. You go into waxing, you may not have to know as much science. So you may say, okay, that's my level of science. I can adapt to that. But knowing the process that you have to put in to do that, I think that helps paint a better picture for the student. So chapter 9, like I said, on the job is going to talk about, well, what is it like on the job? Booth rental. What is booth rental? Booth rental, you may also see the term also known as chair rental. It's a form of self-employment. You are not considered an employee because that is one of the other terms for this chapter. So booth rental, you're also known as a chair rental, is a form of self-employment. So you'll get a different form when it's time to file taxes and business ownership. The term extends to say, and tax designation distinguished by renting a booth or station at a salon, a spa, or a barbershop. So you're renting a space of some sort. Just like a barber or a cosmetologist would rent a booth, you are renting, some places have access to where you can rent a space and you can pretty much do to the leisure that you want. Very similar to a suite, they do have certain things that you can and can't do within the building per se, because every place has rules, but you're renting a space that's very similar to our modern day suite. Okay, what is that versus commission? Commission is going to be your percentage of revenue generated from a service performed as the professional. So when I worked in a spa, my split was 45-55. So what that meant is I take 45% of this service and the employer takes 55% of this service. They'll break it down for you. At least my place of establishment did. They break it down for you to let you know how do they get to this particular percentage to make sense of your split or your commission. So, okay, what is that versus an employee? Because then they have some establishments where you're an employee. You're not working from a commission. You're also not booth renting. You're working as an employee. So what is an employee? Employee is an employment classification in which the employer withholds a certain tax and has a high level of control. So, guys, keep in mind, the reason why I'm reading it so close to the text is because you're studying for state board. I may add my own little ad lib kind of sort of to the definition, but I want you to remember the text because state board is going to test you on the text, not based off of my little feed-in or add-ins to what I'm saying or adding to the text. So, you still get a pay stub when you work on commission. Keep that in mind, because some people will want to know, well, do I get a pay stub when I work on commission? Yes, you still get a pay stub on commission, because they're still going to take out taxes, and they're still showing you what your taxes looks like that's being taken out. Just the same as if you're an employee. It's just the taxation and the employment classification is totally different. Now, if you're booth renting, they're not going to do any of that, because you're just paying them for that particular booth or that particular suite, and you do what you will with your tax information once they send you out your forms that you're going to need when it's time to file your taxes. Client base. What is client base? Client base is what? Your customers who are loyal to a particular beauty professional. So, of course, you may say client base is your following. Client base is your fans. Stick to, like I said, as close to a text as possible. So client base is your customers who are loyal to a particular beauty professional. When you're an independent contractor is going to be a form of self-employment and a tax designation with specific responsibilities for bookkeeping, taxes, insurance, and so on. So you're responsible for your own, bookkeeping. What do you spend? What are you making in regards to your tips? Because you do have to file taxes on your tips that you make in your facility. And that's the same on if you're booth renting, commission, and if you're getting paid as an employee. Because if you're an employee, but they do allow you to get gratuity or take tips, you still have to file an additional form to say that I made this much money. I need to pay tips. I need to pay taxes on it. If they don't do so on like a monthly basis, I don't know if your facility may do so a lot more often than just reporting it all at the end. They may help you out a little bit and help you report them like quarterly or monthly or so forth. Job description. Job description is a document that outlines all the duties and responsibilities of a particular position. So your job description, again, is going to be a document that outlines all the duties and responsibilities of a particular position. What is retailing? Retailing is going to be the act of recommending and selling products to your clients for at-home use. Guys, if you do not know how to retail, if you do not know how to sell, that is the one thing that I recommend to all of my students. Learn how to sell. You're going to need to learn how to sell, because if you do not sell, you're not going to eat much. You're not going to eat much off of just a service. You're going to have to sell off of products as well, because first of all, it's a disservice to you as a business professional to give someone a consultation on their skin or a recommendation on their skin and then not giving them anything to follow up. Even if they aren't if you're not selling them on a product, I tell my students, meet your client where they are. So even if you aren't selling them on a physical, tangible product, sell them on a series. That is you selling something, because you're telling them that they need to come in so often to keep up this particular regimen for whatever the reasoning may be. So you sell them on a series. So you still need to know how to retail. Ticket upgrading. What is ticket upgrading? The name sounds a little bit outdated probably, but ticket upgrading. It's also known as an upselling a service. You should always know how to upsell a service, because the client naturally is not going to always be at that same state all the time. Their skin is naturally going to evolve. It's going to change. So as their skin changes, so should their skincare regimen and the services that you're providing for them. It should not be the same. So it should be consistent to where they are, but it should not be the same all the time, because as the seasons change, as the climate changes, maybe as what they might start taking, whether it's medications, whether it's supplements, vitamins, if their workout regimen, if that changes, your services may have to change. So it's just really contingent upon where they are. So ticket upgrading, like I said, is also known as an upselling a service. It's the practice of recommending and selling additional services to your client. So the reason why I had introverted that piece into there before I finished reading the term was because it doesn't always have to be adding on services. It could be a replacement of a current service that may be a better benefit for your client. Maybe my client is paying an additional fee for high frequency when instead of her getting high frequency this week, I want to switch out the piece of equipment and I want to use LED for her particular facial. Or maybe I want her to get a combination package where she's paying to use both machineries. So it doesn't always have to be an add-on. It can also be a replacement. So that's pretty much chapter 9. Again, chapter 9 went over what is it like to work as an esthetician or skincare therapist in the beauty business. What are the expectations of transitioning from school to work? What does that transitioning look like? What are the things that you're going to need? Summarizing your employment options in the real world. What do you now have access to? Where are the places that you can now apply to? You can now instead of applying for the front desk, you can now apply to be the esthetician. Things of that nature. Practice money management. So you want to practice good money management. You want to make sure that you are writing down things that you are spending for, classes that you're going to, gas. They have apps for gas to calculate your gas that you're using for mileage. You want to do all of that. Those are your bookkeeping practices that you're doing when you are writing these things down, taking care of your good money management skills. Okay, demonstrate selling in the spa, the salon, or the barbershop atmosphere. What does that look like? What is the expectation there for doing so when you are selling? What does it take to sell? And also, lastly, using your marketing to expand your client base, your customers, your loyal fans that continuously come back to you. What are you doing to market to them, to keep them coming back, and also to attract new customers or new clients? Also, are you maintaining yourself? That was something that was mentioned in the previous chapter from chapter 10. Are you maintaining yourself so that you can branch out if you do decide to open up a business to your employees and to clients? Because nobody wants to work under a boss that isn't well kept. And it's not even always just well kept in your appearance, but also well kept in your practices, because people can see when you're an unorganized person. When you go to an interview and you can see they look disheveled, you can pretty much bet that it's going to be disheveled in the business as well. So that is chapter 9. Our next chapter that we're going to do is going to be chapter 4. This is also going to be in the same textbook, which is going to be your foundations textbook. Chapter 4 is going to be the healthy professional. What does that look like? All right, we'll see you in the next video.